That's right, we at the Barbershop. Stay tuned.
All right. It's your man, Max Weezy, live from the 919. Welcome inside the Barbershop. I am so happy to have you guys here, and welcome to the show. I am joined by Ashley Stroehlein. Ashley is a super duper wonderful sports reporter in Charlotte, North Carolina. She works for NBC. She also covers Conference USA for the NFL Network and works in motorsports too. And so, Ashley, welcome so much to the Barbershop. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, I'm glad we could finally make this happen. I feel like we've been talking about it forever, and every time I think I'm going to have a calm day, I never do. But here we are, so we're going to talk about a lot of sports. So let's do it.
Well, actually, just a little bit too, if you don't mind. Like, out of all the people that I sort of kind of came in contact with, like I went to school for journalism. I met a lot of people like you do in college. You meet professionals and everything like that, and like your story is one of the ones that like I'll probably never forget, because you didn't like start out like just jumping like, right into like sports reporting. Like, what were you doing before that?
Yeah, my degree is in math, right? I was a high school math teacher and basketball and track coach. And, this was always a dream of mine, but I grew up in this little teeny tiny town with no red light. And I was like the dreamer, right? I think everyone there knew that. Like, no one's surprised that I'm actually doing what I'm doing. But for me, it was like, okay, well, I went from that little town to Radford University, got my degree, and then I just highlighted a map of cities up and down the East Coast that I would be okay moving to, and applied for all these teaching jobs. Took the first one that I got, which was in Statesville, North Carolina, about 45, 50 minutes outside of the city. And I remember the first time I drove into Charlotte, and at the time, like for me, I was like, wow, like this is such a big city. Like, this is so cool. Now it obviously feels a lot smaller, but when you leave a small town and you come to a place like Charlotte, it's a little overwhelming in the beginning. And I just knew once I got here, I saw all of the sports teams, all the local TV stations, the radio stations. I was like, okay, I'm going to create my own opportunity. Somehow, some way, I decided to go back to one of the broadcasting schools. So I was teaching high school during the day, taking night class, interning on the weekends. And eventually it just got to a point where after my internship finished at WBTV, I was like, I'm just going to hang out till you guys like find a position for me. I'm not going anywhere. Like, we'll figure it out. And I got hired as a news producer for the 8:00 show. They were launching a new show on Bounce at the time. Brigida Mack and Delana Little hosted that show. And I would teach high school during the day. So I would be at Huff High School at 6:45 in the morning. Last bell would ring at 2:15. I would run to the car, get to the city, run prompter for the 4:00 show, edit the 8:00 show. Really wanted to be in sports. So then I would spend time hanging out with Delano. Like, that chapter of my life was just a series of naps, right? Like, I was like, how am I going to make this work? Did that from, I guess, February until the end of the school year. And then I got an opportunity to be the morning show producer for KISS 95.1. Top 40 Radio, Manny, Roy, and Loren here in Charlotte. Great people. They took me in, and so I would do that job from like 5:30 in the morning until 10:30, nap, go into BTV, edit, prompter, edit, do that whole routine that I just explained, and did that for a while. Then the part-time sports position opened, and I was originally auditioning for traffic. I was editing. My news director was like, hey, I think you could do traffic for us. The position's open. But like in reality, I'm like, hey, I still use the GPS to like get around Charlotte, but fake it till you make it. I will be your morning traffic girl if that's what gets me on the air. And but luckily the part-time sports position opened up. So he was like, look, I know you don't want to do traffic. Like, let's go do sports. And from that point on, it's just kind of crazy how everything has fallen into place. I did part-time sports, then the full-time weekend anchor position opened up. They didn't have anybody. I just kind of got thrown into the fire. I had no idea what I was doing. Like, didn't know how to time out a show. I was like, what do you mean go to break? Like, but I was like, it's my opportunity. I've got to do it. And, after 2 months of that and watching them bring in other people and interview them and audition them and, honestly crying in the sports office some days because I knew they had somebody there interviewing for the position. Finally, I got called into the office and they're like, we've seen enough improvement in you. We're going to offer you a 3-year deal. And that was a great chapter of my life. I got to work with some awesome people at BTV, and Delano, he was an awesome mentor, and I owe so much to him. And then now I'm at NBC Charlotte. I made the jump over there, and I work with Nick Carboni, and he's been an awesome, partner to have in this crazy sports world. And we've done a lot of great stuff together in our, first year together. And as you mentioned, I did NFL Network Conference USA last year. Unfortunately, COVID, we don't have that going on this year. NFL Network didn't do that package, but that was a great experience. And yeah, that's the story in a nutshell. So very unconventional way of getting into sports broadcasting.
Yeah. I mean, it's just an inspiring story, honestly, because personally for me, I got my degree in journalism. I had a lot of different things that was going on for me. When I got out, I wasn't really sure exactly what path I wanted to take, because there's so many just in the world of journalism, but also, a journalism degree does open up other opportunities, in corporate, so for a lot of other people that, might start out doing something and they want to do something else, it's inspiring, one, because it shows that you can always go back to your dreams, or you go back to what you want to do no matter how you start. But also for people like me, I sort of, coming out of school, it's just get a job. So it's like you start going off with a beaten path, but now I'm back doing the work that I love doing, and it's something that now I see, I love it. It's my dream job, but it just wasn't there for me as soon as I got out. But now it's here, and I'm doing it, and I love it. So it's just a very super inspiring story, and I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, and I just think it's so important to realize it doesn't matter what age you are or where you are in life. You can rewrite your story at any point. You just have to have the courage to do it. And I think fear holds so many people back. You just got to jump. And if it doesn't work out, guess what? You can try something else and something else and something else. There's always tomorrow. And I think we are so kind of set in this mindset of, okay, you go to school, you graduate, you have to get the job, you have to do X, Y, Z. But really, there's no formula. It's just however you want to make things work. And I know in sports broadcasting, there's certainly no step by step. It's just kind of, okay, what next? Where's the next door I can open and get into? So yeah, I just think it's so important to do what makes you happy. And I've had a lot of different jobs, and I can definitely tell you waking up every day and enjoying what you do is so important. So I just encourage people to always follow their heart. And your dreams may change. You may do something for a decade and then decide you want the next chapter to be different, and that's okay too. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah. So let's get into the world of Charlotte sports right now, which is a little crazy. I want to kind of talk about though, we'll definitely get into the Panthers. Obviously, it's football season, but we're just about to wrap up the NBA season, and I guess nothing's in official yet. I guess with the NBA starting the new season, but we know that is going to come very shortly after this season ends. And so one of the things, particularly with the Hornets, that it seems to be a really good opportunity now. And from a fan's perspective, I was super duper excited that we got the third pick in the lottery draft. It seems like the lottery never really falls the way we want it. It's very disappointing. But no, we have the third pick, and there's a really good opportunity here. It's not like last year where you have a really it's it, this has to be the number one pick person. It's sort of a top three. Mm-hmm. And most of the experts are saying whoever, if the three teams get any one of those three players, it's good for them or whatever. But I think it's very interesting, and I'm very interested to see how it plays out from a fan's perspective. I'll go ahead and say that I hope that we somehow get LaMelo Ball, and I'll say because one, I think at this point in the we have the young players that we have played really well. I think PJ Washington just made all rookie, which is great. But I think at the point that we're at now, I think we need something. The Hornets need something or a player that's going to not only be a good player and help bring us success and kind of get to where we want to go, but also someone that's just going to bring some attention back to the basketball team. And the Panthers have so much of it. Both of the teams are sort of trying to figure out who they are because, there's so much rebuilding that's happened.
Yeah.
But I think getting somebody like LaMelo, who's a great player, but also he brings a lot of media attention, I think that's just like something that will energize fans that have not seen good basketball in a very long time. So I know that we're in the third pick, so a lot of it depends on what the other two teams do. We have no control over that. But I think best case scenario, again, just from a fan's perspective, is getting LaMelo. But from you as a person that kind of covers the team and you have more of an inside perspective, like tell me like what you think about what the opportunity that the Hornets have with the third overall pick.
Yeah, I mean, you just got to take the best player that's there at number 3, right? I mean, that's pretty much to me what it boils down to. It doesn't matter what you really need. It's who is the best player that is there when it's our time to make the pick. And you just hope that the Hornets get it right. I mean, we've had some moments and it's not been very pretty over the years. And so, all right, we've been given another gift. Let's see what we do with it. And, it was really exciting watching the lottery and seeing that we got, okay, you wanted the number 1 pick, of course, but getting 3, everyone was excited. There was like this positive spirit kind of about Hornets fans on Twitter that night and everyone that was interacting. But there's also those fans who have been burned by the organization that are like, okay, we've got it, but what are we going to do with it? So you just hope that they truly take the best player available. And I actually got to talk to LaMelo during the draft combine. He did media and I was able to hop on that call. And it was so interesting. I don't know. I guess everyone knows the Ball family and kind of like you mentioned that all the extra that comes with them, right? It would be interesting in Charlotte, whether it's good media, bad media, whatever, but it would be something just to bring a little flair. But I expected so much more, but he was so just like, nope, yes, don't know, yes, no, yes, no. But it was interesting when he was asked about the Warriors, like what if Golden State drafts you? Like a lot of people think that's not a good fit for you. Your dad said that, and he's like, well, my dad's his own man and I'm my own man. I don't really care what my dad said. Like I'm going to be a good fit no matter where I go. And I was like, whoa, he just threw dad under the bus. So that was an interesting moment during his presser. He was asked about the Hornets and he's like, I definitely can fit in there, but I think I'm going to fit in with any team. That was his answer. No matter where it was in the NBA, the only team at that point he had met with, he said, it was New York and had a good meeting there, but it didn't matter. You could ask about any of the teams. And he's like, I'll be a great fit. I'm good. So he has the confidence. There's no doubt about that. And his journey to the NBA is definitely different. Playing overseas and having those, added experiences. I think, he kind of said, that's shaped me. And you're going and playing with grown men in other countries. And I think that's helped, caused me to grow up and mature. So we'll see where he lands. I just hope the Hornets get it right and get somebody good. And, just because you have a high draft pick doesn't mean that they pan out in the NBA. We've seen plenty of busts. So hopefully whoever we get will bring some excitement. They'll develop into a good player. And it's just, I feel like I love the Hornets, right? And you look over the history of the organization, you have, Muggsy and Dell and Alonzo, like all these awesome players and all these great stories. And back in the day, there was never an empty seat in the house. I love hearing those stories. And I just wish we could have that here now. I think everyone's still sad about Kemba, and you saw him go and the Celtics reached the Eastern Conference Finals. I'm so happy for him. I'm so happy he got to experience that. But I think people are still upset that he's not a Hornet. Like, what's going on, MJ? So we'll see. I know it's a whole lot of talk, but I just know people's their hearts have been broken a lot. So we'll see what happens in November when the draft takes place.
Yeah. My whole thing was just like, okay, Hornets, like whatever happens, like just don't outthink the room. I think that's the worst thing, in that moment that you can do with that opportunity, because it doesn't come along very often. And to your point, those teams from the 90s that got a lot of attention. I think that was just a time where the city was excited about professional sports, and those players were great players. They necessarily probably didn't have like the celebrity like coming in, but they turned out to be really good players. So I think you can definitely, I agree with you. You can definitely if you get the best player. Some players don't pan out, but if it works out, then no matter who it is, they can definitely grow into a household name and the team can be successful. But I think selfishly, just not only wanting the team to succeed like on the court, but also just to get some attention sort of like back on a team that just hasn't really had much to talk about in a very long time. And even when we had Kimba, like it was exciting to watch for Charlotte fans, but even just like outside of Charlotte, like no one talked about the Hornets unless it was a rumor that Kimba was going to get traded or whatever. So it's just like, man, just like give us something, give us a reason just to, just to be excited about Hornets basketball,
Yeah, I mean, it's sad sometimes when you go to Spectrum, right? And you go for a game and you see more jerseys for the away team. The cheers are louder for like I've had some players come here as free agents and they were like, what is this? Like where I played my last market? No way would you hear more cheers for the away team. So there are some nights where I'm just like, I'm in awe. Sitting on press row, I'm just like, wait, what was that? Are we cheering for the other team? Like, and don't get me wrong, like I'm sure as a fan of the sport, like you're excited when there's a player that you really want to see come. Like you might buy a ticket to that game because you want to say, oh, I've seen LeBron in person, whatever. That's fine. But whoa, the disrespect some nights. Like it would be hard as a player to know that's your home court and that's how, like that's the atmosphere for you some nights. But again, that's also on the organization to turn things around and win games and give fans a reason to be excited. I love Coach Borrego. I think he's so invested. He has such a great energy. He wants to build the identity and shape the culture. And we just talked with him and Miles Bridges because they had their little 2-week camp. Of course, they were one of 8 teams that didn't make it to the NBA bubble, but they got to have their own bubble here and do some workouts, but also just some team bonding. Like they celebrated Caleb and Cody's birthday. They went bowling. Cody Zeller was playing tennis against Coach Jay. So just really still finding a way to bond and develop, even though they weren't a part of the bubble. And I think there's some good pieces on the team. I think there's some good personality. But one of the questions that came up for Coach was, well, how does Charlotte become a destination for top free agents? And that's kind of what you mentioned, right? Like, how do you get that buzz about the city, about the team, to where it's a conversation in the national media and players are like, wait, Charlotte might be a place I want to go, because we don't have that. We get people at the end, right? Well, Dwight's doing well this year, but he came here for a 1-year stop. Tony Parker came here and then retired. Like, we just get people for a hot second and then they're gone. So we want people to come and stay that are going to be top free agents.
Right, absolutely. And I guess I want to ask a little bit more too, like, what is it like? I mean, now it's a young team. It's a lot of young players that have got drafted in the last couple of years here. So just what is your impression of, it's hard to lose, for athletes, but like, just other than that, just like about what you kind of touched on already a little bit, but like, just the chemistry right now, like as they're a group of young players just trying to figure it out and learn and grow into a really good team. Like what are you kind of like seeing and hearing just from like a morale standpoint from the Hornets?
Yeah, well, I think when the season was suspended due to COVID, that's when that team was kind of playing their best ball, right? They had kind of found their rhythm. They were finding ways to compete every night. That was a big thing. Maybe they didn't win, but they were truly competing. And I think you have Devontae Graham, who probably got snubbed a little bit as most improved, right? I think a lot of players were like, what?
Definitely got snubbed.
So he's shown great strides when he actually got playing time this year. Before he was behind Kimba and behind Tony. This year, neither of those players are here, so he's showing us what he's actually capable of. As you mentioned, PJ really stepped into his own as a rookie, got some nice accolades at the end of the season. I think Miles Bridges is so athletic. I think he's got a lot of potential. We'll see. There are some good pieces. Cody, he's your vet. He's been there when he's not injured. I think he's doing good stuff for the team. So we'll see. I think as far as like morale and chemistry, I think they're all so close on and off the court. I mean, you've got Miles and Dwayne putting out a rap album together. So I think that they care about each other. And I think that desire to do good and to win is there. You got Terry Rozier, who came in and brought some kind of veteran leadership. He got to do some things he didn't get to do in Boston. So I think they all care. I think they want to win. I think that desire is there. And I think they're all kind of coming into their own as players in different ways. So I think there's potential. And then, like I mentioned, like Borrego, like I don't know who wouldn't want to play for him. Like I leave his press conferences and I'm like, I'm inspired to tackle the day, so I can only imagine what it's like being a player for him.
I want to ask you something. You mentioned about the awards tonight, which was like, obviously obvious, but this is kind of always on my mind when we get the results back of who voted for awards, and we know that the media, and I think in the NBA, it's just media that decides all the awards that go out. And as a person that works in media yourself, I know that you're really busy just as a person that does, local media and some other stuff, but it seemed the conversation, especially after the results of this year, where a lot of people were talking about, oh, how could LeBron only get 16 MVP votes and all these other discrepancies in the awards voting. Like, do you think that maybe the voting should be done a little bit of a different way? Like, I'm just thinking about maybe some of this is the fact that we're asking all these people in the media that are probably some of which are covering the sport nationally and probably other sports too. And how do you have the time to really pay attention to, 32 NFL teams and 30 NBA teams to make sure you're really doing your due diligence to really, get a vote in besides watching the big games. And so what do you think about that? You're busy. So I'm just imagining your own schedule, but somebody who covers media nationally, and it just seems like people are getting snubbed, or there's just a lot of oh, how could this happen? What's your opinion on that?
Right. Well, I think you always it's nice to be rewarded at the end of the season, right? In whatever job you're in, it's nice to be awarded something, but you can't you can use those as milestones that you want to reach to get a little added motivation. But if you're playing for the individual awards, I get it. I'd be frustrated too, right? If you felt like you had a career season and you didn't get any votes or just a handful of votes. So you kind of have to, I think, as a player, yeah, I want it, but it's kind of as, Giannis says, until I win a championship, I'm not an MVP. It's great that you gave it to me, but I haven't done the one thing that I want to do, and that's win as a team. So I think that's one thing to take into consideration, but I get it. I mean, I want to win an Emmy for my work. I want to feel like I was the best that year in something, of course. I totally understand. But I don't know exactly who's on every ballot. I know it's a handful of people. You have to think too, right? Okay, I covered the Charlotte team. To be clear, I don't get a vote, so let me put that out there. But it would be hard for me not to vote for a player that I see every day, I cover every day. You have to truly be unbiased. And again, it's all subjective. It's all an opinion. There are stats you can go off of, but, you and I, how sports people are, right? I could see something one way, you could see it the other way, and we're going to argue until our dying day about it. And it just is what it is. It's so much of life is subjective, and that is definitely true when it comes to voting. So I mean, I'm sure it's, something you can look into, and maybe this year will be the year, especially after players were coming out and saying, even, we bring Devontae back into it for most improved, and Luka was like, take my name off, put Devontae on there. So you have people being kind of vocal about it. So maybe it's something they'll look into. And I do think it's hard. Like you mentioned, for me, I cover so many things on a daily basis to really, if the NBA is not my beat, overall NBA, I'm going to miss things that happen. I'm either going to have to be really dedicated to go and do my research and vote, or, some people might just pencil stuff in. I don't know.
Yeah, when I just hear, there's people with, they've got the NBA votes and the NFL votes and, Heisman votes. I'm like, how do you have time to, watch all that? You have to do your job, but you also have to have a personal life, too. And I just think that, we'll see kind of what happens, but maybe just they think about just restructuring a bit, who gets to vote for what, because it's too much. And people it just give these people a break. Let these people focus on one sport or something. But yeah. So let's move on to the Panthers here. Obviously, this is okay. First of all, let's go back a little bit. We were talking about Cam right before we did this, and that the whole situation, I guess, from the end of last season up until the point where he's off of the team and now he's on the Patriots and everything like that and playing well, and now here comes all if I can learn how to talk. Okay, now here comes all the scrutiny and how could the Panthers let him go, and how could all these teams pass on him, and yada yada yada. So tell me about again, from an insider perspective, like that time period, like what was that like? What type of things, what type of conversations kind of were you hearing that was going on, and like what all went into that decision first to let him go, but then also to, you know, to this point, you know, just moving on from that? Like what were those months like?
I describe it as something along the lines of like a really bad breakup with like your ex, right? And it's like, oh, you're doing this? Well, I'm going to post this on social media. Well, look at me working out. Oh, you went to the media and said that about me? Wow. Oh, like it was, to me, I'm just like, I don't think any of it was handled correctly. And that's no fault of Cam, right? I mean, that was your franchise quarterback, like the team's #1 overall draft pick at the beginning of his career. And I know it was so unfortunate that he suffered the injuries that he did when he did. He just couldn't get healthy, you know, for the last little bit he was in Carolina. But I do believe his heart was here. And that man is a competitor. He wants to win like nobody else. That's why he cares so much after games. Like people, you know, want to fuss, and I don't know, like I'm a little partial to Cam because I've been there and I've covered the good times and the bad times. Like it all boils down to him caring that much. So his emotions just kind of spew over sometimes. So I feel like David Tepper bought the team. He came in, he gave everybody year one to kind of like, he knew he was a new owner, right? Like, yeah, he had a little stake in the Steelers, but he realized, okay, it's my first year owning an NFL team. Let me see what everybody's doing. Let me figure out the ropes. Okay, year two, you know what? I'm bringing in my own people because I'm going to put my stamp on it. It's my team, and this is what I want. Goodbye, Ron Rivera. Goodbye, Cam Newton, and a whole lot of other people. Like, if I were to walk in the locker room right now, I would know a handful of people. It's all new, and that's fine. Like, that is how it works. It's a business. It is what it is. You got to have thick skin in any professional sports league, but especially I feel like in the NFL. So with Cam, I just think all of that, new ownership, new coach, a lot of drama. I think it was just one of those things where they were like, I just think Tep wanted to do his own thing. I just think that's what it came down to. But I didn't appreciate how it played out on the team's social media. Like they do their series. To be honest, I'm not sure what it's called, but there were clips of, you know, okay, well, how do you want to handle this with Cam? And then the press conference, we love Cam. Of course I want to play with him too. You put that episode out, and then the next thing you know, you're praising him. And the next thing you know, it's like, nope, we released you. Bye. Like, see ya. Good luck out there. So I just think it could have been handled differently. That's my personal stake on it. But I'm a very much like, let's do everything in private. It's not a show for the world to see type person. I did feel bad for him just because I feel like he really wanted to be here. Unfortunate injuries. But you look at him now, he goes to New England and he spent all this time working on getting healthy, and we've seen it all on his social media, and you know, he's had a really good season so far. I'm so happy for him. And it's so sad that no team would take a chance on him, and he's playing for the minimum in New England. You know, I mean, but whatever, you got to do what you got to do, right? It's just from league MVP to getting paid the minimum, but now you're showing people why you are who you are. So that's my spiel. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I thought and speaking of just how the way they handled it, like I think they had him up for on the trading block, like during free agency, instead of just releasing him at the beginning of free agency. So a lot of teams could have time. Like they sort of like released him at the end of it when a lot of teams had already picked up quarterbacks. And so that was really part of it. And that was, for me, that was kind of personally like hurtful. And then I remember over the summer, I forgot, like, I think they posted on Twitter like a poll about like who's the best paying forever, and they didn't put up on it, and that was like on national news. I was like, it was
terrible. Don't get me wrong, the people they put up, legends in their own right for the organization. You left off your one MVP like ever, like multiple franchise records. Like I couldn't even like participate in Twitter that day. I was so mind blown. Like, it was just some shady stuff. I don't care how you look at it. I don't care if it was an error by somebody no. Like, somebody should have said, hold up, take it down. Something.
Yeah. So, like, now, at this point, like, it was so sad, that the way that played out. And also, like, how did you – tell me some things about, like, Luke retiring really, I think hurt a lot of people too. And it was like, I think when Luke retired, like that's when it really hit me. Like, oh wow, this is not. This is going to be a different team, and this is going to be like a rebuilding and just kind of getting reacquainted with who the Panthers are, because it's just not the same anymore. Tell me some experience you had just like covering while Luke Kuechly was on the team, and some of your best memories of him and how you felt when he retired.
Yeah, well, I was at dinner when the announcement came out. I was off, and the next thing I know, I'm like, check, please. I have to go to work now because I have to go be part of our Luke Kuechly has decided to retire coverage. So that was a whirlwind. I have some great memories covering Luke. I think I was a part-time employee, and he sat down and did a one-on-one with me. That was one of my first ever, if not the first, sit-down I did with a Panthers player. So it wasn't the first. I want to say the first was Jonathan Stewart, but Luke did one shortly after. And so I'm forever grateful. He was always so kind to the media. I mean, everyone knows how polite Luke was off the field, right? So I don't have anything bad to say about him. I'm not sure anybody does. I think he was just a leader. I think he's someone else who was kind of, when he was on the football field, he was definitely a different person. If you ever hear some of the mic'd ups, like you're like, Luke said a cuss word? Does he cut? What happened? But again, that's just, he tapped into that person on the football field. So, I think he was just a fan favorite. There's a billboard up in town right now. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's like, cheers to fan favorite Luke Kuechly. And so those billboards are throughout the town. So even though he's not on the team, people still know that he's a big deal, and now he's a scout with the team. So he obviously still wanted to be involved. I wouldn't be surprised to see him coaching at some point. Everyone talks about just how smart he is and how he just sees the game differently. So I think he wants to find a way to pass that knowledge on to other players and help groom them. So I'm glad he's still involved with the organization. I'm glad he's still in Carolina. I'm sure that locker room misses him as a leader and just as a key piece of their team. As a player, I'm sure he still is there if anybody needs anything. But yeah, I have nothing but good things to say about the Luke Kuechly era in Carolina. Yeah. It's so unfortunate that he suffered the injuries he did. And ultimately, I mean, he picked my long-term health over playing another season because it was a surprise. But I think he kind of looked at what you mentioned, like where the team's going to be realistically, most likely where the team is going to be the next few years. Is it worth me risking it? Or should I just walk away while I know I still have my health? And I think he made a really tough decision that a lot of players don't make. And good for him for saying, I'm fulfilled in what I accomplished on the field. Now it's time for the next chapter.
I think the parallels are very interesting between his retirement and then Andrew Luck. Like you have two very, very good players, very polite, and just they just retire out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Luke did it in the offseason. Andrew Luck did it during the preseason, which was crazy. But just to see that happen, I mean, I really felt, again, for me, I think I had to just step away from really consuming Panther stuff for a while, because it was just because that you see the mural that's down the street from the stadium with with Cam and Luke and all the players. I think they're some of the main players from the 2015 team, like Greg Olsen and all them, and not have that team anymore, and just to kind of it be a reality with that moment. There's
that picture of all them walking across the field, and it was at one point Cam was the last man standing.
Yeah,
make it to the season either. I mean, it's hard when you care, right? When that's your team, and you mentioned Greg. I mean, he's another player that kind of felt like at the end of last season, he was nice. He did the politically correct thing, put out the statement. And then when the Cam stuff happened, he was like, yeah, me too, basically, And then you see them embrace a few weeks ago in Seattle with the hug on the football field. So, I think a lot of players have had similar experiences. So
it hurts when I think it's SB Nation they do the collapsed videos on YouTube, and when they did the 2015 Panthers collapsed, I was like, oh man, this really hurts. But I want to talk about the future a little bit here, and obviously we have to just see how the season plays out. I think that the team is almost sort of in the limbo that I feel like the Hornets were a few years ago with Kemba, where it's like so my early impressions are it seems like they're too good to lose a bunch of games and like tank, quote unquote. But it also seems like obviously they're not going to be good enough to really, compete, for the playoffs. So it's like, okay, you have this kind of middle of the road team. It's very obvious that this owner and this coach wants to put their stamp on this team and really and build it up and be competitive. And Matt Rule, has a reputation for kind of building back programs. So from your perspective, like from what you're seeing so far and what you know about the team, like what do you think the future of this team looks like in the next couple of years?
Well, what I can tell you is they refuse to call it a rebuild. So they're like, take that word and throw it out the window. This is not a rebuild. I've been impressed. Like I got to go to a couple practices during training camp and the energy, like the constant movement. I mean, they are definitely pumped up. Everything's high tempo. Coach Rule is out there doing drills with the players. You hear him all practice long. So, I mean, he got a 7-year deal. So he's here to build this thing up. And as far as Tepper sees things, you're going to take us, all the way. Like that's the kind of contract he got. Like it is like about long-term success. I think the team's confidence is high and they finally got a win against Los Angeles, the first one of the Coach Rule era, if you will. I think that they believe that they are a winning team right now. Like, Christian McCaffrey, when he suffered his ankle injury, we got to speak with him. And the first thing he said was like, look, I don't want to talk about that to open this press conference. I want to say at the time they lost 2 in a row. I don't want my team to have low confidence. We have all the pieces we need to be a winning team. It's just about going out there and executing. Like, I want us to keep the outside noise, like, out of the locker room. We are capable of winning. We have the pieces to win. So they really, truly believe in themselves as a team. And I think, everybody on the outside, as Christian said, has labeled this as a rebuild. They're not going to win. I optimistically said they would go 8-8 this year. So I need the Panthers to win a lot because I was the only person on our preseason show that said the team would have a nice record. So, I think time will tell. The one thing about the NFL, you can never predict injuries, right? Like, who would have thought McCaffrey would have an ankle injury to start the season and go on IR? Luckily, with the rules this year, he can be off of that in 3 weeks. I think they have – lock the door, thrown away the key, don't care what anybody else is saying about them, and they believe in themselves. Now, I think we can all look and say, okay, you do have some nice players in key positions, and you do have potential, but it's the NFL. Like, isn't everybody supposed to have that going on?
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, this era seems very like Oakland Raiders, like when they first got John Gruden and signed him to 10 years, and it's like, okay, we're not going to be horrible, but like we're not going to. Right. People are questioning how good we'll be too. And looking at the numbers and stuff, I was kind of just like watching some stuff, and like the defense is, at least the secondary is actually playing well, and the offense has the potential to move the ball, and they've shown that. So it's nice to watch, but. I'm just very interested in to see kind of what happens. And one more thing I want to get your opinion on too before we close out here is it just came out like a couple of weeks ago. I didn't even realize this, but Tepper is apparently the richest owner in the NFL. We have the richest owner in the league, and David Tepper. So like what are your impressions of him first of all, and then also like how do you think what other things do you think he'll kind of do to put his imprint to make not only a better team on the field, but off the field, like in terms of giving the fans an experience? Like, what are some things that you're hearing in that aspect? Yeah, well,
the cool thing for me as a media person, Tepper likes to talk to us. Like, I've had more interactions with him than any owner in Charlotte for any team. Well, granted, one is Michael Jordan and one was Mr. Richardson. So, it is what it is. But I think he is like, everything when it's the beginning. Like, you're so excited. It's new. You're not jaded. And so I think that's kind of where he's at. He's so excited to own the team. He's bringing, soccer, Major League Soccer to Charlotte. Like, he really wants to put his imprint on this city. So I think you're going to see a lot from Mr. Tepper and his family. And if you know his backstory, like, he comes from very humble beginnings. So it wasn't like he was just born into this and it's been his whole life. Like, he understands hard work and coming from nothing. So I think he cares about the community, cares about the education system here, giving back to teachers. So I think, he's really dedicated to helping make Charlotte better as a whole. And I think he wants his players, but I think Coach Rivera also kind of instilled that. Like, that organization was already about, okay, this is who we are on the field, but who we are off the field is just as important. So he kind of came into an organization that was already very community oriented. So I think he's just going to push that even more. Like, what can we do as an organization? As far as fans, he's also the owner that you see tailgating with people sometimes before games. So I think he's all about the fans. He knows that's what it's about. I mean, I think if anything, COVID and the pandemic has taught us, without fans at games, it's not the same. Like, that's the heart and soul, the true heart and soul of your team. And I think he already knew that before, but he definitely knows that now. So I think anything he can do to make the fan experience better, he's here for. As you mentioned, he has the money to make it happen. So we will see what the Tepper era brings to Charlotte. But I think he's here to stay, and I think the more he can bring, the better. I don't know if you've ever got to be around him at an event or anything like that, but full of energy, super pumped. And, we've got football, we've got soccer. I don't know what's next for Mr. Tepper.
Yeah, we'll end on that because it's about we'll definitely have to see like what's next. And I think, again, exciting times for Charlotte sports. Potentially, it just depends on the decisions of people that get paid a lot more than we do. So all
day long, but what are you going to do? Because you're making big bucks.
Yeah, we just get paid to talk about it. But Ashley, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure having you on here. I really appreciate it. I really think it's just kind of we are in a special time and a time of like, okay, like the future is ahead for us in Charlotte, both for Hornets and the Panthers, and just for sports in general. We can have this conversation all day, but I want to thank you so much for doing this, and tell everybody, I guess, where they can find you, follow you, tell everybody what you're doing, plug yourself real quick.
Yeah, well, I'm on WCNC Charlotte, the NBC affiliate, so you can catch me there on different days. I'm there Saturdays, Sundays. We do extra football stuff, and throughout the week we do a lot of sports reporting. Nick Carboni is my partner in crime, so if it's not me, it's him. And you can follow me on Twitter at @Astro or Instagram ash.stro, and that's about it. So, but thank you for having me. It's been so awesome catching up with you, and I think we failed to mention, like, we met because you actually like shadowed and interned with me for a little bit back in the day.
Yeah, I did. I definitely, again, I think at that time I was just trying to like really figure out like what my place was, and that was a time where I was just like, man, I need to see like all so many facets and so many different things, and just again, the options are sort of everywhere. So I learned a lot that day, just kind of being in that environment and kind of seeing. So I appreciate you being so open to that and again, just being so like willing to come and spend some time.
Definitely. We'll do this again. Hopefully next time it won't take us so long to actually make it happen. Yes. You're always welcome back to the Barbershop. Thank you so much again, Ashley, and everybody. Hope you enjoy. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you next time. Peace.
Let's rock, we at the barbershop. Stay tuned.